Welcome to the very first episode of the Ophelia Orlando Hour. This is a weekly, maybe, I don't know, video series where I'm going to be talking about books and movies that I love. Probably mostly movies because I have so many that I need and want to share with you, the person who's watching this. But basically, this plant is kind of coming out of my head, huh? Kind of weird. Got my film eyes on now. But today I won't worry about that because I'm talking about a book. My name is Kate Phillips. I am a filmmaker, professor, person, reader, movie watcher, weirdo, freak, lover, lots of different things. And one thing that I love is talking about movies and books. And so that's what I'm doing on here. I'm talking about movies and books that I love. That's pretty much it. Why am I calling it the Ophelia and Orlando Hour? Well, these are two characters who exist both in literature and film, and that's kind of like my crossover. Orlando is the subject of Virginia Woolf's Orlando, who is also played by Tilda Swinton in Sally Potter's film of Orlando. So it's a twofer, women writer, women filmmaker. Ooh, Ophelia, opposite. She's been made by men, but that's Ophelia. That's Ophelia. She's just laying in ponds of water waiting for men to love her. And that's what we love about Ophelia. I love Ophelia too. Ophelia written, of course, by a pretty good male writer, William Shakespeare. And my favorite rendering of Ophelia in film is Kate Winslet playing Ophelia in the Kenneth Branagh Hamlet, which is the first movie I ever masturbated to. Fun fact. Am I weird for that? Yes, for sure. Do I love Kenneth Branagh inappropriately? Yes. Why? It's because he's memorized Shakespeare. Any man that can memorize Shakespeare will probably do it for me. But Kate Winslet, always hot, especially hot in that movie. Okay, what else do I want to say? Oh, yeah. The other reason that I chose Ophelia Orlando is because I feel like those are my two genders, basically. And if that doesn't make sense to you, just read Hamlet and Orlando, and maybe it'll make sense. Orlando is like the best fucking character in all of literature, okay? She is like immortal, and she spends like a couple hundred years as a man, having power and control. And then she just switches it up and starts trouncing about town as a beautiful woman. Oh, it's so good. And it's very sexy. So you should definitely watch and read that. But we'll definitely get into, I have to do an episode on Orlando, of course. We'll get into that. There's so much that I want to get into because what I really want to talk about is how poetry can help us arrive at truth in such a interesting way. That's very interesting to me, and it always has been. So yeah, if you are looking for recommendations for really great movies or books to discover or explore or rewatch, that's what I hope this will be for. I want to give these discussions about movies and books, particularly to people who feel a little bit left out of the discourse, the film bro discourse, which was imposed upon me as a young person. Let me tell you, I have been going to film classes and film school since I was in high school, and almost always was the only girl in the entire class. I have had so much film bro culture imposed on me again and again, but I have braved these dark and dangerous caves. I have come out with some wounds, but also some really good movies that I discovered, really amazing filmmakers that shouldn't be buried. And so a lot of movies I'll be talking about are movies that I think are way overlooked, and definitely people should have been talking about a lot more. So I'm going to fucking talk about them, and maybe you will too. So women authors, women filmmakers, and also stuff that is made by men, because there's beautiful stuff made by men too. But I definitely want to talk about the stuff that just speaks to my freaking soul. I have so much to share with you guys. I honestly do. I have so many great movies, so many great books I want to talk about, so many great friends I want to bring in, and people that you'll meet by watching this. So please please subscribe, please comment on what you're liking, what movies or books you might like to hear or see me talk about. I want to respond to things that are going on in the world, but I also feel like any movie and any book that's any good will do that, because that is the power of poetry. And especially this book. I'm so excited for you to read this book. Anybody who will. I know it looks kind of long, but you'll fly through it. Seriously. You can probably audiobook it. I'm not an audiobook person. I'm too ADHD. By the time a whole chapter has gone by, I've already thought about 75,000 different things, and my brain has completely dissociated. So I need a book, and I make messes out of my books. I dog ear, I write in them, I underline. I'm a savage. In fact, I love to look at my books and feel like I had a deep conversation and sexual experience with them. That's how I feel about the Poisonwood Bible. Barbara Kingsolver, oh my God, I love you so much. I just have to say to you, Barbara, this book is a thing of stunning, 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 stunning stunning beauty, and it spoke to my soul in such a deep way. And I think this is a really powerful book and beautiful book, and it's funny and it's exciting, but it's going to really resonate with you if, especially like I think any young woman can resonate, or any woman who was young once. So most of you, unless you're a baby watching this, which that would be weird, I wouldn't recommend this for a baby. You're going to be hard to read. But if you're an adult woman, you will resonate with this book because you were once a girl. If you are a woman who has sisters, this is a book about 4 sisters who all go to the Congo, which is under Belgian rule, or it's just coming out of Belgian rule in the 1960s. And if you guys know anything about what Belgium did in the Congo in the 1950s and 60s and before that, it's horrifying. It's something you should know about. It predates what's going on in the Congo right now. It also speaks to a larger system of colonialism and imperialism. I think it has strong connections to what's happening in Palestine. I think it has strong connections to just the way that we as an interconnected world are grappling with the legacy of colonialism. I mean, this book is about white people who go to Africa, about some of the very first missionaries to Africa. That culture of like the white mission culture to Africa is something that I grew up around. Elizabeth and I are going to talk about it a little bit. It's something that always set my teeth on edge. I think this one of the main themes of this book, for me at least, was the forced complicity of the wives and children and the families of the colonizers. And I think that speaks to the way that white women particularly react to what's happening in the world now. But I also think it's about just our complicity as living beings. Yes, white women have a very particular kind of complicity in the recent, let's say, 500 years of colonialism. But I think that complicity exists kind of beyond racial and gender lines as well. And so I think that you don't have to be a white woman to connect to this book. I just think it has particular resonances for now. Oh, this book will connect to you if you had a crazy father. For all those daddy issue girls out there, this book is for you. You're going to see your daddy in Nathan here, and it's going to be interesting. This book helped me have a very honest conversation with my father, actually. It helped me understand an experience of my childhood that I hadn't quite been able to articulate or put into words. And it was something that I was actually able to express to my father after reading this book. So thank you, Barbara, for that. This book made me think of one of my best friends from college, Elizabeth. Elizabeth and I have been friends for a really long time. We've been friends since college. And reading this book, I mean, it was so Elizabeth. Elizabeth's she lives in Atlanta. She has, wow, I'm going to get the number wrong. You have a lot of sisters, 4 sisters. So Elizabeth's one of 5. Also, I think the Southern component, the Southern Christian component is something that Elizabeth and I both connect to. And I just really thought of her. I mean, the mother made me think of Elizabeth's mother and my mother so much. The mother is a wonderful character in this book. Oleana is an amazing character who, again, it's about grappling with that complicity. This woman who is doing her duty, but it puts her children in danger, it puts her in danger, and she has to live with that she went along with it. So anyway, I thought of Elizabeth so much when I read this book, and I recommended it to her immediately. And Elizabeth, I have to just shout her out, fucking read it immediately. God bless you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth's a big reader. She reads a lot of books, and she read this and she really connected to it. So I was like, we've got to talk about it. And so this is just a conversation that I had with Elizabeth. I'm really starting this off casually. I was trying to like not be a perfectionist about it and just like shoot the thing. And we did it on Zoom. I did a boo-boo. I hid self-view because I find it really hard to have a conversation with someone directly when I'm like checking my hair and stuff. So I was trying to just focus on Elizabeth when we were talking. I thought Zoom would record both of us still, and I was wrong. So for most of this conversation that I have with Elizabeth, you're just going to see Elizabeth's face. But actually, that's fine because Elizabeth's beautiful and wonderful to look at. Like, there's nothing wrong with looking at Elizabeth for however long. But I actually like loved the conversation that we had about this book. And so I didn't want to go back and re-record it. I just wanted to share it with you, so sorry that it's imperfect, but I hope that this, discussion is enough to just like stimulate your interest. You get to know me a little bit more, Elizabeth a little bit more, who's just an awesome person and wonderful, beautiful human being who I love. And yeah, so I hope that you enjoy our conversation, and I hope you come back for more Ophelia Orlando discussions in the future. Please comment on what you're liking in these interviews or in these discussions, what movies or books you might like to hear or see me talk about. And just, give me some positive affirmation because everyone can use it, and especially me. I am a Leo moon and a Leo rising, and I need your approval. So give it to me, baby. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you read the Poisonwood Bible after this, and I hope you stay tuned for next week and the week after. I'm going to be sharing just some freaking awesome movies, including this bitch, Johnny Guitar. That's in 2 weeks from now. So get excited, and thank you so much.
Like it's like the way that you, anyway, it's a lot.
Wow. My goodness. Well, we obviously have so much to talk about in Poisonwood Bible that's bringing up
No.
Ada vibes, but
Oh, I know.
yeah,
Sid was a very interesting character. I did not love, like at first I found myself kind of like skimming through her.
really?
What, wait a second. First of all, we need to back up because I just gave
Yeah.
you a bunch of personal updates. Do you have any personal updates?
Yes, before we get into the book, um, I'm hiding self-view actually. I think that that's gonna be good because then
Oh, okay.
you.
Should I do that?
You don't have to, but I think it's helping me. I just had to check my hair, but now I'm checking it too much, so I'm gonna stop looking at myself.
Your hair is really good.
Well, I am just so excited to talk about this with you because I could not have thought of anybody else while reading it, but also because I never recommend a book and someone reads it, and I'm just so delighted
I
that you
read it like immediately. Like I
immediately.
think we spoke and I went to my mom's house immediately afterwards and I looked for it and I got it and I read it.
I mean, I think it just like you have to read it. Like this book for both of us just like speaks to our souls.
But
So
did you remember when it was like I remember seeing that book? What is the year?
98,
What,
sorry, 98.
98? Okay. So that tracks because I feel like I remember the summer that like my aunt and I thought my mom were like reading this on the beach. Like I feel like I remember seeing adult women with this book. I remember a different cover from that one.
It was like
Uh,
white with like a red.
yeah, exactly. It was supposed to look like parchment or
And
something.
similarly, like Maddie read it in school. And then after I read
Yeah.
it, I was like, Maddie, why didn't you tell us that this was like the story of our family? I mean,
Okay, but if she was 15,
yeah, I think it was at 15, this would have been like pretty triggering and intense for me. I wish I had read it though. I don't know. But yeah, I remember it being around in the 90s, but I think it found us at the exact right time because I mean, this book just hits not just like my own family experience, but also like just feelings I've been having about the world lately so much.
well, I think it speaks to this is probably still popular, but like the trend of like mission trips and
Yeah.
going to share Christianity with other people. Like there's definitely a culture of that kind of evangelizing.
Yeah, the like colonizer evangelizing, which we both also grew up with at like in like, well, you didn't grow up in the South, but you had a church that was similar-ish, right?
Yeah, and I went to like summer camps in the South that were full of people like that. Like I was like, the only person from my part of the country in these places, and my parents sent me there to like get me out of town. But my parents were like, we need you to
Oh
go
yeah.
cave. We like can't supervise you. Yeah, I think that there was a real, I don't want to say they were colonizers before colonizers, because obviously that's been going on for many, many, many centuries. But I think that it seemed like that family was a little bit on the cutting edge. Like I don't think a lot of other families were traveling to,
Well,
like
yeah,
they were kind of ahead of the
yeah.
curve of like upper middle class white people traveling to Africa for the week with their mission trip.
You mean
With
the Poisonwood Bible? Or
yes, 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 yeah.
oh yeah, you're like
It was freaky that they did that.
like this, I think this takes place like during and right after like these horrible atrocities that were happening. And it
Right.
was like so oblivious and insane for them to even come. Yes, now the mission trips that like the churches we grew up in where they go to Africa and like try to, help people. What this book is saying in a lot of ways is like you have to be mindful that like you are not coming into like a vacuum. You are coming into a place that has encountered this a history with imperialism and colonialism and like atrocities that have happened based on like what white people have come in and done. And then before that, wars and tribal wars and stuff like that. It's just like you can't just like show up and be like, guys, like you guys have to read the Bible. So it was like almost like point like the stuff that you're talking about, you're right, is like a muted version of this, but it's like the same also, if that makes sense.
It's the same impulse. One like scene or moment of that book that I think about all the time is when they very first get there and they're like planting crops. And
Mm-hmm.
the dad is like, you guys are idiots. Like, why are you like, let me show you. I'm gonna like redig the holes. And it's like maybe their way was like making mounds on top. Like there
Yeah.
was some way of planting things. And he's like, let me show you. I'm gonna redo it. And then like, this is my way of gardening or farming or whatever. And like the plants all died, the
Hmm.
crops all died. And it was like they were like, no, there's a reason that we do this with the mounds. Like you are on our territory. You actually have no idea. But his default assumption of like, I'm gonna show you guys how to plant food. Like, fuck you.
Yeah,
Doing this for centuries. Like they know
I
the
know.
soil is different here. Like,
Right. Yeah. And I loved that she like I haven't even read any Barbara Kingsolver books, but like I almost don't want to because this was so good that I don't know. But
okay, is she Demon Copperhead?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I have that actually. My hold at the library just lapsed.
Oh goodness.
But I want to read that. I'll read it and I'll tell you if
Okay.
you should
Thank
sully your
my
experience with Barbara Kingsolver.
because she feels these characters deeply, but she also feels the place deeply. And she must have spent a lot of time in the Congo to be able to write this. I can only imagine.
Yeah, do we know her story?
I think she did grow like as a child. Actually, I have no fucking clue. I'm making that up. I'm getting her confused with the
I'm looking it up.
okay.
Okay, guess what? Kingsolver was raised in rural Kentucky, lived briefly in the Congo in her early childhood,
Okay.
and currently lives in Appalachia. Okay, so this must have been,
Truth.
yes, holy shit. Okay, when Kingsolver was 7, her father, a physician, took the family to Leopoldville, Congo.
Oh, this is true. Okay. This is why this book is so good. I mean, wow,
You
that's
couldn't write that stuff without like
no.
consulting someone who had been there.
And I think that makes sense now because I think Leah is her voice most. Um,
Yeah.
and I like in the stuff that Leah thinks and feels about the way white people have impacted and European nations have impacted the Congo, like that stuff really resonated with me. And I was again like just really struck because for me, a lot of this book is about also like and I think especially white women, but in general, women's forced complicity in atrocities, because I always think about that. Like, I always want to write the movie like The Sopranos, but like about the daughter of Tony Soprano, like the women who just like were born into a
Someone will
family.
give you the biggest grant in the world to do that.
You know, it's a really good idea.
Like the why is The Sopranos having such a moment?
It
Did
always
it just hit like a no, like recently? Like did it just hit like a milestone anniversary? Is it like it's been 30 years since The Sopranos came out? Like The Sopranos is like having a moment.
back
So
on
maybe
that.
it's the time to like start a little whisper campaign about
This is it. I'm whispering. I'm trying to write this movie. But I mean, I don't know.
that's such a good idea. I would love that.
Thank you. I know. I'm dying to
I've
write
never
it.
seen The Sopranos, but like I
So
would.
good. But I love like for me, I always because he's like splitting this like suburban lifestyle, but he's also like out there being a gangster. So like in this and she's like going to high school and then college and just trying to live a normal life, but like becoming aware of what's going on. And I think again, it's like a heightened version of what happens to all of us in America, and especially people who, you know, I don't know if it's necessarily needs to be a direct cognate to our fathers, but the men that built this world, built a world where innocent beings are routinely sacrificed and put through injustice and horrible conditions. And like part of growing up, I feel like as a young woman in America is like learning that not only is the system existing, but I've been complicit in it since I was born without realizing it.
Well,
Yeah.
and you realized it very like this dawned on you slowly and gradually over the course of many, many, many years. And so when you have just a teeny little bit of awareness of recognition at a time, then it becomes even more like, okay, like what do I actually do with this? Like
Yeah.
what do I do with this without like totally blowing up my life?
We'll choose Rachel's path, right? Which is like the oldest sister, which is
Yeah.
like, well, fuck it. It's not my fault. It's not my problem. I'm going to be the white woman owning a hotel in the middle of Africa and only cater to white people and live my life and have running water. And,
Yeah.
I'm just going to fully lean into like this, like I don't know, like we know plenty of people like this who would just choose to shut themselves off to the truth because they're like, well, I got born into this, so why would I change it, you know?
Well, and I thought that it treated her with kind of like an unusual amount of sympathy. Like I did did you not get that?
No,
Like
I agree. I love Rachel. Yeah.
I love Rachel too, and it's very clear at the end, like she's like not a good person.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? What would have happened to me if I had been 15 years old? I had
Yeah.
been expecting this like very normal adolescence. I'd been expecting to date, like she was totally, I mean, all of them were robbed of like a normal life, whatever normal means. But I, I don't want to say you can't blame her. Clearly, clearly she's got some fucked up
I'm blank.
policies and priorities.
Yeah.
But maybe when you disrupt someone at the age of 15, it is not so surprising that they would, live this very
She's trapped in adolescence.
she's trapped in adolescence.
She's
Exactly.
still wanting to be that little princess who gets her
Yeah.
cake and has a boyfriend. And I mean, of course I
I mean,
relate to her.
she's just a really well-resourced
Yeah.
15-year-old.
Yeah, that is. And that's how she's living her life. And like,
Yeah.
oh, her marriage to Ibn Axelroot, that like creepy old South
Oh
African
my
man,
God.
like
But you know what?
in
She
there.
was like, here's what I've got to do. I mean,
Yeah.
it was so strange to me the whole time. And it happened with all the girls. Or maybe it was really just her and Leah. I mean, Ada was like a little bit of a mystery the whole time, but I was like, you guys, like, don't give in now. Like, there's still hope for you. And then I was like, well, wait, why do I really want them to just like go back to Georgia? Like, but they were so, and maybe that happens when you don't have access to the internet. You don't really know what's going on at home. And you're just like, okay, this is my life. There's no plausible way out here. Like, doesn't seem like we're going home anytime soon.
Mhm.
I guess I'm going to marry even Axelroot. I guess
Yeah.
I'm going to let myself fall in love with what was Leah?
Asshole.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're right. Reading it, there is that there's this slow shift where you're like, you guys can still like, why can't you just go back to Georgia and have your normal life? And
Yeah.
they could, but it's like it's not even the physical distance. It's something has happened to them by being here.
They actually can never go
They
back.
can never.
Yeah,
And it's of
yeah.
course, I think Ruth May, dying is the reason that they can't ultimately, like that is the shift. And like for me, that part of the story too is like for a long time I was like, why did that have to happen? But it again, physical, I know it's just like I was wondering how you felt about that because it's
But
really,
that transformed the mom too. Like that was the real,
yeah. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to read. That's what I was looking for. Well, back to like the complicity of women. Like there's this beautiful passage after Ruth May dies. I love, and again, this is, I think, just like I just think of our mothers with Orleana, like just so much, just like the ways that she stayed and stayed and stayed, and then finally was like, no, and didn't do it in time to save her daughter, actually, but after she lost her daughter, was like, I'm walking out. Like there's a bottom for every woman that maybe, I don't know, where we eventually will rise. Like we can take so much,
only so much. Yeah.
so then they're walking, and I just love this. It was just like, she says, plain and simple, that was the source of our exodus. I had to keep moving. I didn't set out to leave my husband. Anyone can see I should have, long before, but I never did know how. For women like me, it seems, it's not ours to take charge of beginnings and endings. Not the marriage proposal, the summit conquered, the first shot fired, nor the last one either. The treaty at Appomattox, the knife in the heart. Let men write those stories. I can't. I only know the middle ground where we live our lives. We whistle while Rome burns, or we scrub the floor, depending. Don't dare presume there's a shame in the lot of a woman who carries on. Don't dare presume there's shame in the lot of a woman who carries on. On the day a committee of men decided to murder the fledgling Congo, what do you suppose Mama Mwanza was doing? Was it different the day after? Of course not. Was she a fool then, or the backbone of history? When a government comes crashing down, it crushes those who were living under its roof. People like Mama Mwanza never knew the house was there at all. Independence is a complex word in a foreign tongue. To resist occupation, whether you're a nation or merely a woman, you must understand the language of your enemy. Conquest and liberation and democracy and divorce are words that mean squat, basically, when you have hungry children and clothes to get out on the line and it looks like rain. I love it. So good.
I love that. I actually, I remember that last part too.
It's so beautiful. I mean, like there's so many passages in this that are just like I and like to what you were saying earlier too about the girls, like there's just so much that's good about this book, but like every what I loved too is like reading a woman author writing this story was like they were complex. They were all complicit in ways, they were all ignorant in ways, they were all, you know, trying to learn, but they were also just full of like a light and a beauty that is recognizable of all women and young people and children, you know, that like light of childhood and like this like you were talking about with Rachel, like you can see that little girl
Yeah.
in her so clearly. And so this isn't a book about judgment, even though she has some strong words for the, you know, colonial powers. It's even that is like, this is a complex fucking living system. And it just is in a way, is kind of like what she's saying, I feel like.
When if you are 14 and you're reading this book for school, it is super easy to say, Leah's the good sister and Rachel's the bad sister because Leah is cool with the, you know, natives of the Congo and she's not racist and Rachel is racist. But it's like they are all vulnerable and naive and flawed in their own ways and processing this, like, you know, being plucked from their past life and placed in the middle of this like incredibly conflict-ridden place. Like,
Oh, for anybody.
irresponsibility of
Nathan.
of the dad, like just like taking them all there. It's like unbelievable to me.
It really is we just kind of could talk about him as a character too. He's very interesting. But
Okay, yeah, and how about him at the end?
yes.
Like it that was so satisfying to me in a weird way, even though it was like deeply sad because it, like the fact that he was still there at the very end, just being this crazy, like I'm like the family, the girls and Orleana were just completely irrelevant. Like
Yeah,
they were like accessories to him. They were not like,
well, that's why when Leah realizes that like the people all thought that they were his wives.
yeah.
They thought that they were just like all his wives because it was more like it looked more like that to the people of the Congo. Like here's a man who just has these women like for value and just to like
Totally.
part of his
And
like
they have nothing to do with his mission or his message or what he's up to. Like,
believed in, like, and he needed them to like support his vision and
yeah,
see his craziness, and when they couldn't, he just shut them out.
right. And kept doing his thing.
Kept doing his thing and kept doing it and never, you know, that's a thing where it's like, I think again, like there's a lot of resonances for me with my father and maybe with you with your father, but it's still like not like it's a much more extreme version. Having just read this, like I think it was really validating for me to just even like the way that the girls and the mom describe the cycle, like being around him, like the way that they're all like gathering together against like the coming storm, like watching his emotions to see when they'll shift, you know, and realizing like how much of my childhood was spent watching him in fear and anticipation of being hurt and not knowing when that would happen and
Counting the beats between the thunder and the lightning. Like one is, yeah.
Good. Yes. But like also like Leah, especially, bless her, in the beginning, watching him adoringly too. And wanting to know how can I speak in a way that he'll value.
But that was actually weird to me because I think that one thing we have spoken about is like, you know, both of our fathers are like incredibly charming and can turn it on. And there are moments when you're like, oh my God, like this person is incredible. Like you know,
Yeah.
Nathan had none of that. Nathan, like I so struggled to see any moment where he was like at all
Charming.
I'm like, why would you adore him? Why would you want to like gain his approval? Like he sucks at every point.
I think that is missing. I agree with you in this book. Yeah.
And maybe that's, I mean, I'm sure that's intentional, but I was hoping for a more complicated character with Nathan where he would be like, oh, I get why they love him. Yeah.
And I just had to go on faith, like that he had been that way. Like I got that from the way that Leah admired him. Like, and I tried to imagine like him being this like charismatic pastor in Georgia and their life back
He
then.
definitely wouldn't have been a laughing stock there.
He was
Like
a
people would have
leader.
respected
Yeah.
him. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so and he becomes, and like that's Leah's realization that her father is a laughing stock and he's a fool. And because he is so ignorant of this culture and just refuses to learn. But so I just had to kind of like create that. But you're right, like, and I wonder too if like she didn't give Nathan that kind of complexity because this was so much about the
Yeah.
full dimensions of the women and like what other, there's plenty of books about like crazy men and showing how they got that way. But like this was like about just like the deep richness of how the feminine soul responds to like uncontrollable, dangerous, and chaotic and difficult world.
Well, totally. And I am not trying to be like Barbara Kingsolver should have written this different.
No, but you can say that here.
I'm just like,
That's fine.
no, I think that she did it like exactly right. I'm just like, oh, this is really interesting because we really had to dig deep into our imagination to be like, I totally trust that he was
Yeah.
charming and charismatic and cool because he sucks.
He
Like
sucks.
there's
Yeah.
nothing redeemable about this.
No, from the beginning,
man.
he's in that garden, like you said, he's out there, and then it rained, and it got
And then it rained, and
and he goes back out and does it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that, and not even just like, and again, when I say our fathers, yes, I'm talking about our fathers, but I'm also talking about just like the spiritual father that we kind of grew up with in this like patriarchal world of like America in the 20th century, where it's just like we were all raised by this like daddy of prosperity and, like who like Trump embodies, which is why people vote for him, but basically I think, he's just like the archetype of what we've all been actually worshiping in our souls since, right? But
prosperity, success,
yeah.
winning. Yeah.
And like bullying people if you have to do it. And just like, I don't
Whatever
give a
it
shit
takes
about
to
your
be on top.
We're in America. We're gonna grow shit this way now. Like y'all are ignorant. And like I love that too, the way that she would I think Leah has this like almost like memory of like Congo of the past, of the way that people would have like walked in the jungle, like taking the vines as roads, and like how she says that in the Congo, like roads make no sense. The rain will wash any road out that you try to lay down. Like Africa, and especially Central Africa, like resists the Western way of living, like in its bones. It will not let you, like to this day, I'm sure it's difficult to like cross big parts of the Congo and like, and I love that actually, that there's some part of the world that's resisting this need to like raise and flatten and destroy and like put up a shopping mall everywhere,
I mean, it's nice that there are places that doesn't work for.
Yeah.
It's like one thing that just freaks me out about the algorithm and about the flattening of taste and the flattening of architectural styles and interior styles and just the way that everything starts to look the same. And you walk into any city in the whole world or any city in America, and you can find like a coffee shop that has like the same, like, medium wood countertop. Like there's just this flattening that algorithmically we are all being like driven to the same, logical conclusion. And it is like really nice to know that there are places that will never, ever, ever be.
Yeah.
Like there will never be one of these just like generic,
like
coffee shops in the Congo.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can't build a Walmart in Leopoldville. Like you're not gonna,
yeah, exactly.
that's true still, but
I hope that's true still. I don't know. And I'm sure like, and there is some kind of, there's just a different kind of order. Like there's a different way of doing things there that is like, anyway, it's comforting.
I liked too that like, I think like what I like that Barbara Kingsolver is doing here, and I think obviously now that we know that it happened to her, like she has a real reason to tell this story, but I really liked that she was like unapologetic about this being a white woman's perspective on Africa. She's not like trying to be like, and that's why I think Leah is this great character, because she hasn't, her love is of this place, but she truly is an outsider. And, like even her strong feelings for justice are still a little bit misplaced in this world, which is just so interesting. And like, but she also has as she grows, she learns it deeper and she becomes almost like of it in a way too. But it just is like interesting that I guess, she's not saying like, this is the end. Barbara Kingsolver is not like, this is the end all and be all.
This is the story. Yeah.
She's like, this is what, it's almost like I think all white women should read this book, because it's like
Yeah.
all of our stories in a way of like, look at what you have, even without moving to Africa, what you are involved in just by like living your lives. And you can make a lot of choices about how you respond to that, but this is what you have been born into,
We saw three different choices about how to respond to that, like with all the different, like each of the sisters that survived, like took that experience and it propelled them forward into three extremely different paths. It was crazy that two of them stayed there.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
I guess stayed on the continent.
yeah. And yeah,
Yeah.
well, so we should have done this at the beginning, but like with any book with multiple sister characters, we have to have the very important questions. Who's your favorite and which one are you? So, what do you
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that I am Rachel.
I know you are. Yes, I know
Yeah.
Rachel.
I'm Rachel without the racism, I hope.
Yeah, no, you're not racist, but
Yeah, but she was the one that I related to the most. And I think that was like some eldest
yeah.
sister stuff. Like she was so, I mean, I felt so sorry for her. She like so just wanted to have like a normal, she was like, oh, I'm gonna wear this little skirt suit for my 16th birthday and I'm dying for a boyfriend. And I can remember feeling like I want all these like trappings of adolescence and I want to be like I'm surrounded by all these like little girls and this like infant sister because Pauline is 11 years younger than me. And I remember always just feeling like held back by the little girls that were around me. I was like, I want to be like a normal teenager and I want to have a boyfriend and I like want to be just totally loosed from my strange family that has like way more children than anyone else. And when we go to the mall together, it's like a parade. There's too many of us. Like I just like want to do my own thing. And it's so unfair that I have to be here with all of them. Anyway, I'm Rachel. I felt
Yeah.
I felt
Wow.
Rachel. Which one are you?
Well, first of all, I have to say, because which was your favorite? Did you answer the second part of the question? Is Rachel also your favorite?
I mean, Ada was very interesting.
Yeah, because I think you're also kind of Ada in a weird
Yeah. Okay.
her writer side, like the way that she plays with words and the way that she looks at the world. And
Yeah.
I think Ada, I would like to say I'm Ada, and I think we both have a lot of Ada characteristics, but she's almost like I kind of love her the most because, and even in that way that you were the older sister, but also had to like turn inward in a way because everyone else was like not where you were. And so you
Yeah.
had this inner life that was very much your own world in a way, I feel like. And so that Ada, like the way that she like plays with palindromes and words and she just thinks about things, and she's such a writer. It's so interesting that she becomes a scientist, but like she's always trying to solve the puzzle of the world. And I definitely feel like that's in you too. Like, and I just think back to like, this is such a sidebar, but hopefully, like, whenever people were praising the Barbie movie, like, last summer or whatever, I was like, girl, I read Jezebel in 2008. Okay. I didn't need the Barbie movie, but
Did we talk about the Barbie movie?
I don't know. Probably, I'm sure we agree on it.
Yeah, I think we do.
I'm sure we both, I can guess you enjoyed Will Ferrell rollerblading around, and
Yeah.
there's some really funny moments, but
Yeah.
overall, the need for everyone to be like, wow, when America Ferrera said that speech, I've never heard anybody say that. I was like, girl,
Where
have
have
you
you
talked to
been?
any women or like heard of like, I mean, this is like feminism from like, not the 1960s, like the,
2007 core.
century, what? And yeah, so anyway, but the whole point of that is that were the one who introduced me to Jezebel. You were the one who were like, there's this world out there, of thought. And you were like, I feel like you were always leading me into that. And so I do think like I've always known you as someone with that really deep inner life that like almost doesn't need to be validated by other people, but it exists.
Well, in fact, I get a little bit annoyed when I'm validated by other people. I'm like, yeah, I know.
No, yeah.
So wait, so Ada was your favorite. Was Ada also the one that you related to?
I think Leah is who I related to the most. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that. And I,
Well, I also related to Rachel too. I mean, gotta say, but I think Leah, yeah.
Leah is a funny, like, this is a funny thing about you because you, and we talked about this beginning, but like, you have such a like a natural like questioning of and resentment for authority. And it is a very interesting combination that you also want to like, you want to perform and you want to please and you want to be, you know, the best and earn validation. Like it's just a funny
Yeah. Oh,
situation.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Leah has that. Like, and it is like, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? Like caught up in like how I feel like she idolized her father in the beginning. And so there's this like, and I think that's true in my life. There's this like push and pull of like almost my anger at authority comes from the fact that I was rejected by it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, fuck you. And then actually, wait a
Yeah. If you can't win it, beat it.
yeah, and then oh, actually it was fucked up, so that's good. But and that's where like, that's very interesting that that's in Leah too, is like, and I think that that gets called out by Anatole and some of the nuns she stays with later, where they're like, yes, we like love your heart for justice, but how much of this is rooted in still kind of a personal childhood vendetta here against your father, you know?
Yeah, so I actually don't remember this because now that I'm thinking about, you know, bucking authority or questioning authority, like, did anyone in her family care that she fell in love? Like, was that what they wanted for her? Did they care?
I think by the time she gets with Anatole, like no one cares about her anymore.
Okay, okay, okay.
That's the other thing that's weird about Leah. She gets kind of abandoned. Remember how
She
Orleana,
totally goes off on her own. You're like, what happened to the, yeah.
Orleana chooses her child. Remember, like when they're leaving and they have to get in the plane and there's only one girl, she takes Ada. And I was wondering, when I read that too, I was wondering for you, like especially having disabled sisters, like that push and pull between Leah and Ada that always existed. I mean, my sister is not disabled, but because of like certain things, like I also had this like guilt about succeeding where she couldn't or didn't feel like she could or whatever. And so that resonated, but on a totally different level with being disabled and like with the mom kind of having to choose the one that was disabled, like
That fucked me up. Yes.
okay.
Yeah, but I think sisters do this no matter what. Like I think, you know, disability or not, you always like like the difference is always surface. Like you always find some reason to feel guilty. You always find some reason to say, "Oh, like I have this advantage over her. I'm smarter or I'm, you
Yeah.
know, athletically gifted." Like
Like
women will always be
she's book smart, I'm street smart, or
exactly,
whatever it is.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm brunette hot, she's blonde hot, like
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, like women do this. Like we
Yeah.
always find the and that's why I have always been afraid of. That's another reason why like IVF kind of freaks me out, and I'm not proud of this, but I really am afraid of having twins.
Mm.
So when you do IVF, you have like a way, or any kind of like fertility stuff, you have a way higher like chance of having multiples. And I've always been like, man, I would hate to be a twin. I would hate to have twins. I feel like it creates this like totally weird dynamic where you're just constantly comparing yourselves to each other and you're constantly looking for the edge or the disadvantage that you have. Like you never win.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I always felt that too. Like I would never want to be a twin. To have someone else like constantly to compare against you, and you're never.
The only good kind of twins. I think I've told you this, but my friend Lisa, who I grew up with, her dad was our like the pastor of our church. I think I've told you about her. She like lives here. I
Yeah,
need to.
yeah, I've heard about
Yeah,
her. Yeah,
she has she
yeah,
has twins, and they are boy and girl twins. And I was like, those are the only good kinds of twins because boy
separate.
girl twins are separate, but they're also popular as fuck. Like you
They
are going to be
are.
the first ones to have boy girl parties.
Yes.
Your sister, the girl twins friends will pal around with all the boy twins friends and they'll be cool. And it's like those
Yes.
people have an instant ticket to success. The other twins are freaks.
Well, let's pray that maybe you'll get a boy girl pair if you IVF.
Yeah, exactly. I really hope I don't can't afford
But
it.
yeah, crazy. Two babies at once is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that thing about just like the comparison, but also that like Leah does end up actually getting kind of unmothered.
Well, wait, are Leah and Ada actually are twins?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay, I've like forgot that. But she totally gets unmothered. She's like, I am going to go off and do like it seemed to me now thinking back on it, I'm like, oh well, that is a pretty serious like bucking of authority to say, well, I am not only going to like make my home here. I'm going to like full on marry this man from the Congo and like build a family here. I mean, I'm sure that's not what her
I'm
vision
going
for
to
her.
marry someone who is a revolutionary, who's going to be in jail. I'm going to be on the side, I'm
Yeah.
going to be fighting. We're going to move around. Like, it's very interesting. But I think she settles into it. Like, I loved, the scene when they all meet up, like as adults and they go touring, like Rachel and Ada and Leah, and they're all so
Yeah.
different. But oh my gosh, there's this moment where Leah says something about, like, Rachel kind of says something about how like savage people, like how they were killing people before the colonizers ever got there. And Leah
Yeah.
like is like, well, you don't even know like what that was about. Like it could have been because they may have had a wisdom that there's a certain amount of population balance that has to be there. And so they were doing ritual sacrifice as a way to balance the population, and it was just kind of like that to me represented a wisdom in Leah that wasn't there earlier. Like I think she really did start to learn and become mothered by the Congo in a way, or like by,
Yeah, who was the older woman? It's been a few months since I've read this. There was an older woman who kind of,
yeah, she takes her in, right?
yeah, when Anatole is yeah.
Yeah. She's like, and yeah, she kind of is mothered by the land and by the women of this place until she
Yeah.
is almost changed. What did you think of Leah and Anatole's relationship?
I mean, I thought it was kind of hot in the beginning, but I was afraid the whole time. Not the whole time. I found myself very like nervous at the beginning that she was just like totally misreading the situation, that his intensity
Mm,
was maybe cultural or something that she didn't understand. Like I found myself until it was too obvious to ignore, I was like, Leah is not reading the room right.
oh,
Leah has this huge crush. Anatole is not interested.
yeah,
She is just like, it's gonna ruin it. Like she's gonna really offend him. Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't I did you have that reaction?
I was worried about it, but when he started giving her nicknames, that's when I thought there's something about her that, and again, because I identified with her so much, I want to believe that, someone could see through my, not to say like a person who isn't white, but like it's almost like her whiteness is a barrier to being understood in that world,
Uh-huh.
as the curious, like, I don't know how she's curious, she's passionate, she's compassionate. And those things are masked in her and in everyone, but especially in her, by what she represents by her skin color. But
But I
also,
was 34 reading this book, and I was 34 reading this account of this, what was she like, 14?
yeah, 15.
Like, entering into this flirtation and then romance with this man, and that's probably part of it too. It's just being like, please don't fuck this up, Leah. Like,
Yeah.
this is the one person who actually seems to care for you.
Yeah. I was worried for her in that way. Like, don't be racist, like, but how can you help it? And I also
Yeah.
like that there's like this acceptance that like any white person is racist by design. Like, we only by doing serious work do we like get out of that place. But
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah,
Leah,
you land here from Georgia to come to spread Christianity. Like,
you're
you've got
racist.
to dig yourself out of that hole.
Yeah, yeah. But that brings up an interesting thing too about age that I noticed when I was just flipping through this again last night. Like, and this book is set in the 60s, and like we know, like, even just not that long ago, like women and girls got married a lot younger. Like you're talking about a 14, 15-year-old girl falling in love with someone who eventually becomes her husband. Nowadays, I would be like, that's ridiculous. You're never going to marry someone you fall in love with at 15. But back then, it was pretty common. Rachel gets married at 16 and moves to South Africa. And
God, that was actually very gross.
that was
But she seemed like she knew what it was. Like she was very
we
aware of
could have, I was
things.
wondering about that. Like at 16, we could have put on that front too.
Totally.
But did we really? And so it brings up this question for me because like looking through this again, I was seeing the part where like Leah is talking about how the African girls are getting married even younger than them, like 11 or 12. And that, of course there's a lot that is, wrong with like child marriage. But I don't want to get into like judging a culture that I don't even have a ton of contact with, but like it's just interesting to me, like this idea of like, when does maturity actually come for a woman? And like, have most of us throughout time been forced into maturity like much sooner? Because she talks about how the girls, they change, their look changes once they get married and they become
Yeah.
mothers, and they're like tired now and they've lost that childhood. And like, is there something in our history of just like being, forced into marriage and child rearing too early?
Well, I think we've just invented more places to go and milestones to experience that like okay, and this happens in like in rural parts of the United States where if a girl does not have like any kind of real chance to go to college, okay, she might actually have a baby with someone when she's 17 and like get a job and just like start her life as a mother and maybe a wife a little bit earlier than everyone else. But like, what else was she going to do? If she lived in a different kind of place, yeah, she would go to college and she would get like a job in marketing or something. And then she would do all of that stuff. But if you don't have like, I don't know, if you are,
Yeah.
there are
Girls.
like, why not? Like what else was Leah going to do? Like she had a crush on this man. She did not have like
Right.
I don't know, you can just see how women mature in different ways given what is in front of them or not.
That's very interesting. We're very adaptable to our environment and the requirements of that environment.
The requirements of that environment, like you had other things to experience.
Okay, left turn because I'm gonna
Tell
have to
me.
cut a little bit.
Oh
But
yeah.
what did you think about the night of the ants?
Night of the Ants.
The night the ants came through. Uh, yeah,
It made me, first of all, it made me feel itchy.
yeah.
Was that, would you say that was like the part of the book when things kind of like turned? Like, would you say that what's the point in the story when like
Yeah.
word for this?
It must be because there were things beforehand, like Ada being stalked by the lion.
Yeah.
When they
But that was like the way that felt was like that was a close call, but like
Yeah, this
well,
was
I
like,
mean, yeah.
it was like it's like they didn't really understand what they were up against until the night of the ants.
Right. It was like that was the center cannot hold, like this situation has become untenable, like we are officially in over our heads and like nothing will be the same.
Yeah, I mean, there were two sequences, that one and the night that they were hunting and they built that fire and they trapped all the animals in the fire.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to read. And then ants too, like both of them just struck me with their horrificness, and like and that both were like what nature is capable of. And I just thought it was such an interesting part that like Barbara Kingsolver never was like romanticizing like, oh, this beautiful, place that white people have ruined, I mean, she said that, but also a lot of other things like these, like I've never heard of that in my life, that you could just have so many ants roll through a town that they would pick the chickens clean and all that would be left were their bones.
Well, yeah, I forgot about that. That was so good.
You couldn't walk like that. I loved Rachel in that moment when she learned to just like pick up her legs, and she was just like, pull your arms in and pick up your legs and you'll be carried along. Like Rachel had some wisdom, to be honest. She's a
Rachel
smart,
had some wisdom. Yeah.
smart cookie. She just is racist, but and then she ended up having this like pretty cool life. I mean, bad, but she was like this hot lady running a hotel in the middle of nowhere, and
Yeah.
like
And
whatever
is
she
she
wanted.
single in the end?
Yeah,
Like,
I don't think she's gonna find love, our
yeah,
Rachel.
but like, didn't she have like forgive me, like, did she marry a couple of different men or she had a couple of different, like
Yeah,
it seemed a little bit modern.
it was adventurous. Yeah,
Yeah.
she was like always looking for more. And yes, that is what makes her also incapable of seeing the consequences of her actions. But I also admire that beautiful desire to always look for more.
So in The Night of the Ants, I need to ask my mom about this, who's now reading it. Like, is there a moment when, like, does Orlando, like, does she, like, not choose Ada? Or like, does Ada get like left or something and she takes the baby instead? Like, is there some kind of like,
Yeah,
how
but because that's what I think the trauma with them is that like Orleana can only really take care of one child in a time of crisis. And so she
right,
always chooses Ruth May until Ruth May dies, and then Ada becomes her choice. But that chapter from Ada's point of view was horrifying and terrifying because you're imagining her, not having full use of her body and being trampled. I mean, that's my greatest fear, honestly, is to be trampled in a crowd. It's like whenever I read those stories, it's like that is truly to lose control and to be crushed, and to be trapped. And like the idea of her like falling down and being trampled. And again, like going back to, I think that was a big theme for me. And I'd love to know, like, I want my mom to read it too. And I'd love to know what your mom says after she reads it. Like, because I don't mean it to be like, oh, look at what you did, mom. But there is this trend of like the mother's betrayal out of survival and how that,
right. Like, what was she realistically going to do? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, she couldn't have done anything and she had to save her baby. Like she was too small, but Ada got left behind there. And like, I guess like it just struck, it's like a very primal experience, I think, of probably every childhood of like the time that you are left to fend for yourself. It's like the mama birds, they push the baby out of the nest and make them fly. It's a part of nature, but I don't know, it hurt.
And did she know in some way, like, you know, did she trust in some very strange, horrible, heat of the moment way, someone else will get like she will, there's no way I'm leaving this baby. Like, you can't really like you can't leave a baby, but like someone else will find Ada, help Ada. Like, I only have space for one.
And I
She,
think that was Leah's trauma, was that the expected person would be Leah.
right.
That someone will, and it's Leah. Like that's what her job is to protect her sister. And I think Leah doesn't in that moment either. And so it's this very, and again, it's like, I think, did you ever see Force Majeure?
No,
Oh, so good. I mean, it was a really good movie, but it was like, it's funny. But did you hear about the premise of it?
no.
Like a family is on vacation in the Swiss Alps. They're all sitting outside at the cafe, and an avalanche starts. It looks like it's about to come down the mountain and kill everyone. It doesn't. But when the avalanche starts, the dad just gets up and runs. He takes his phone and he leaves his wife and his children. He just gets up and runs. So then the avalanche turns out it's fine. It didn't hit the town. Everyone's fine. But now the family has to like go around with the rest of their ski holiday with the knowledge that the dad did that. And
Oh my God, that's fucked up. I want to see this.
it's
Is it
really
good?
good. It's really good because it's exploring this sense of so like the ant night is like what when people can say a lot of things, but when real crisis strikes, that's when you see what people choose. And like in force majeure, the dad is like, I didn't even mean to do that. Like I wanted to, like my spirit would say, I want to be there with you, but it was just in the moment, I don't know. And so it's just interesting, like with that story of like the ants, like how much was Orleana even conscious that she was making a choice or, like Leah or all, but I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I remember going back and reading it like twice to make sure that I understood what happened. And again, not to like, no judgment to Orleana. Like you have all these daughters. Like I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
But I want to ask my mom
Yeah.
if that fucked her up. Just
I know. Like, I kind of feel like this book would fuck up our moms even more than us.
so my mom is not, I don't think she's finished it, and she might be like reading something else, but she's like, oh my gosh, it's so intense. Now I know I never read this when it first came out. She was like, I thought I had read it, but I know now that I like reading it now, I would have remembered because it's so intense.
I think kind of like something we were talking about earlier, that sense of like, this also gave me a feeling of like grace towards my mother too, which I have felt, but it's just nice to feel it embodied in a book like this. Like she did the best she could, and she deserves a life of peace or beauty or whatever it is that her heart is searching for too. And it's so hard when you have these daughters because it almost tells the story that you don't deserve that, but she does.
I mean, I think the book was really good in making you feel, stirring up compassion for like all of them, except Nathan. Like you feel compassion for Rachel, even though she's just like, this ridiculous, rich, older, racist white lady running a hotel. You know, you feel compassion for, I mean, Ada was like easier to feel compassion for because she, you know, didn't really do anything wrong, but like, and you feel compassion for Oriana, even though she's like, she is, I mean, now we would call that woman complicit in her husband's just like terrible colonialist impulses of going, I mean, she was going along with the whole thing.
Mhm.
She gamely packed up her family and packed their little trunks and brought birthday cake mix and said, oh, well, we can still have a really cute little sweet life here in the Congo while my husband is, you know, telling everyone what they ought to believe and civilizing people.
Yeah.
She was just doing the best she could.
Yeah, and she just didn't, I mean, and again, it's like that passage from before, but it's like she wasn't necessarily like being intentionally ignorant about what was happening in the Congo. She just had so much to think about. She was tasked with running her household and protecting her children and doing what her husband said, and so she did it.
What did it say? The laundry needs to get done and the children need
Yeah,
to be fed, and the end of the
that's right.
passage that you read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it looks like it's starting to rain. But the second half of that passage, so that's part of the feminine. But the second half of the passage, which I also think is really powerful, that I think this is what impacted me with Orleana, and kind of where I identify with Leah is her desire to fight, because it's like that you get taught that as the masculine, that's the way to make a change.
Oh yeah.
What I think Barbara Kingsolver is also showing us, the second part of this passage, yes, like the men have this power to start and to end, war and sex and love and marriage, and we seem just caught up in the middle of it. And that seems like they're the ones in power. But she says, but he said, well, I'll start back. Nathan was something that happened to us, as devastating in its way as the burning roof that fell on the family Mwanza. With our fate scarred by hell and brimstone, we still had to track our course. And it happened finally by the grace of hell and brimstone that I had to keep moving. I moved, and he stood still. But his kind will always lose in the end. I know this, and now I know why. Whether it's wife or nation they occupy, their mistake is the same. They stand still, and their stake moves underneath them. The Pharaoh died, says Exodus, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of their bondage. Chains rattle, rivers roll, animals startle and bolt, forests inspire and expand, babies stretch open-mouthed from the womb, new seedlings arch their necks and creep forward into the light. Even a language won't stand still. A territory is only possessed for a moment in time. They stake everything on that moment, posing for photographs while planting the flag, casting themselves in bronze. Washington crossing the Delaware, the capture of Okinawa. They're desperate to hang on, but they can't. Even before the flagpole begins to peel and splinter, the ground underneath arches and slides forward into its own new destiny. It may bear the marks of boots on its back, but those marks become the possessions of the land. What does Okinawa remember of its fall? Forbidden to make engines of war, Japan made automobiles instead and won the world. It all moves on. The great Delaware rolls on, while Mr. Washington himself is no longer even what you'd call good compost. The Congo River, being of a different temperament, drowned most of its conquerors outright. In Congo, a slashed jungle quickly becomes a field of flowers, and scars become the ornaments of a particular face. Call it oppression, complicity, stupefaction, call it what you like, it doesn't matter. Africa swallowed the conqueror's music and sang a new song of her own. It's so good. All of it is good.
Are those scars referring to Anatol's scars?
This is Orleana, but probably, I mean, that
Yeah,
is
probably.
a big part of Leah's on, or like on his scars. Like I know that that's, you know, thematically tied in. And like the way they always talk about the way that the people in the Congo bear the scars of the oppression of like the rubber mines and stuff.
Right.
By the way, I mean, looking up the history too, like I had kind of remember it from high school about like King Leopold and the rubber mines, but it's,
I did not remember any of this.
oh my God. I remembered hearing it was bad, but like looking it up, and then again, just like with the resonances of what's happening now in Palestine. And I think like, you know, you see this pattern just occurring again and again and again. And you think you could think like, this is just the way the world is. Like it's this horrible place where these awful men get to do these atrocities and they get away with it. But I think there's this other force that Barbara Kingsolver is like saying exists in this book, which is the earth, which is like this powerful force that like, yeah, you can come and oppress, but we will just make those scars a part of like who we are, and the river will roll and the rains will come and new flowers will grow. Like you cannot hold on, and it is like weaker actually than the power that is in this earth and is in those of us that are connected to it, I think, you know. It's I mean, it's a kind of hope that I'm looking for. I think reading this book when, you know, all of the stuff is going on in the world, it definitely was on my mind. And just like I have that Leah impulse to be like, how can I live in a world where such horrible things happen? This book gave me that sense of like, I think she's saying, yes, it's true, and you should know that that's true and that we're capable of that. But like it's not the final word, I guess.
There is deep history attached to these words, and it feels really good to get exactly the right one.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I think that's what Barbara Kingsolver did with the Poisonwood Bible. She used exactly the right words. What a good ending.
The PB. This was so fun.
Thank you
I
so
forgot that we were recording.
Yay, that was great. So I love you, and let's talk soon.
I would love to do this again. Cool.
I know, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
invite me back.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. I appreciate it.
Okay.